Thanks, Saoirse, and thanks so much for the invitation to be here today. I'm delighted to be talking about plant-based diets, and I'd like to welcome you all to the talk today. We're going to talk a little bit about what a plant-based diet is and why you should try it. And if you have any questions, you don't have to keep them till the end. Feel free to pop questions in the chat box. I'm more than happy to take them at any time, and we'll try and get to as many of them as I can. So I'd really like you to get what you want out of the session. You've given up your lunchtime, your hour here now today. So feel free to ask any questions. As I said, I have a focused presentation, but I'm plant-based for 24 years now. So if you have any questions at all as we go through, feel free to chat. So very briefly, just about me, I've been involved in health and fitness for 30 years. I started out with a degree in exercise science, followed that up with a master's in health promotion, which covered nutrition, stress management and exercise, and thought I knew everything then, how to create a whole healthy world. But I found out there was a big difference between what we know we should do and actually doing it. So that's what prompted me to go back and do a doctorate degree then in health psychology. So understanding the why behind our health behaviors. So all along I've been involved, I suppose, interested in plant-based nutrition, because that was my own choice, I suppose, way back when. And I was chatting to Saoirse before the webinar here and telling her how difficult it was back in Ireland 24 years ago and how it's changed tremendously now, just, really has over the last number of years. And I suppose what I have my own business, ailisbrosnan.com, and a lot of my programs are focusing on using a plant-based diet and exercise and mindset to support women to create healthier lifestyles. So that's me. And in my spare time, I'm a big fitness junkie. As much as I love my food, if I have a choice, you'll find me out in the trails or the mountains doing something or other. And I do find a plant-based diet is a fantastic way to fuel me to do all my activities. So in terms of why you're here, I'd love for you to pop in the chat box what it is you're hoping to get from the talk and what's motivated you to sign up and learn a bit more about plant-based. Maybe you've been thinking about it, maybe you've been hearing about it, maybe you participated in Veganuary. Why are you here and what would you like to get out of it? And that would help me then to gear the talk towards you as well. So don't be shy, just pop in the chat box the reason that you're here. And even if it's one word, it could be for your health, whatever it is, let me know why you're here. And while you're doing that, it's these are the common reasons that I find when people are interested in plant-based food. The majority of people are interested because of their health, and as you're going to find out during the talk, there are amazing health benefits from eating more plant-based foods. For a lot of people, it's about the animals, and in terms of the way they can be treated in the meat industry, and so on. A lot of ethical issues there. Could be for the environment. We were hearing a lot about that the last few days, with various things in the media, and it's been shown that a plant-based diet is one of the best things we can do in terms of protecting the environment. And there could be other reasons as well. But usually what I find, it's a combination of reasons, a little bit of this and a lot of that. But to be honest, health would be the most common one that I do come across personally as well. And just the concept from an environment standpoint, we'll be hearing more and more about that really. I think as time goes on and the awareness increases around the benefits that a plant-based diet can have. And actually I'll mention one really interesting study that was done looking at what was the best diet for our health and the environment, and show you the outcomes from that study as well. And then Eric saying he's getting more vegetarian, but going vegan is a bridge too far. I reckon it really, really isn't. And it's really interesting. And I'll show you in a couple of slides in terms of how people are now actually going straight to veganism and not even going vegetarian first, which used to be the way. But I'll share that with you, Eric, and you might find that interesting then as well. So just to start, so we're all on the same page. What is a plant-based diet? And plant-based diet and vegan diet are used interchangeably. So that's why I just want to make it clear the difference between them. So basically a vegan diet is where you omit any animal-based products. So that's meat, fish, eggs, milk, butter, gelatin, or even, wearing any things like leather or anything derived from animals. So that would be vegan, where you're excluding. Whereas a plant-based diet is excluding those, plus making sure you're eating lots of plants. So it's lots of fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, which would be your beans, peas, lentils, your grains, and so on. So you could technically be vegan and live off a diet of coffee and cigarettes or Coke and Oreos, it doesn't necessarily mean healthy. Okay, so that's the difference. So vegan is omitting the animal products, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're eating lots of good stuff. Whereas a plant-based diet does, it means you're eating lots of fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and so on. So that's the big difference. And I suppose, majority of people who are plant-based, I find, are more for the health reasons, and people who are, vegan and not so concerned about their diet tends to be more from animal perspective, but that's a very big generalization. So what do vegans or plant-based people eat? As I said 24 years ago, this is what they used to think. It was called rabbit food. People just didn't know what you could possibly eat if you didn't eat meat, whereas people are really pleasantly surprised. And even nowadays, the amount of foods that are available is just amazing. It really, really is. So there's a massive variety of foods in terms of what you can eat. So today I'm going to talk about some of the key myths that I come across in relation to plant-based diets and hopefully dispel those for good. The first one is the fad. That one's starting to ease off a little bit because people can see, I think, that vegan diets aren't going anywhere. It can't be healthy. That's a big one, particularly around issues around protein. And I'll dispel those hopefully for you as well. As we go through. And if there are any questions in relation to any other element of it, as I said, please do pop it in the chat box and would be more than happy to address it for you. So are vegan diets a fad? Not really. If you look at these is mapping vegan diets as the blue line, vegetarian the red line, and paleo diets just for comparison, which was a fad, thankfully. Just to show you the trends from 2004 right up to actually just last month, I think, that I did this. So you can see vegetarianism has stayed fairly steady throughout, and veganism, the blue line, has just gone up and up and up and up. And usually these spikes are related to Veganuary. I'm sure you've all heard of Veganuary at this point. It's really for the month of January that people pledge to go vegan, and that's always every year creates a lot of interest in veganism. But as you can see here, I was mentioning this earlier, Eric, just the people are now going vegan and pretty much, straight from being, meat-based, rather than going through the typical route before would have been going vegetarian and then transitioning to veganism, which is what I did. So it's interesting. And again, you can see the headlines everywhere, just the increases, year on year in terms of people going vegan. And Veganuary that I mentioned, this is started in 2014. You can see how it's grown year on year. Over 500,000, and this year we're participating in it. So again, lots of traction, lots of media attention in terms of demands for foods is growing, plant-based foods and so on. And even during lockdown, plant-based food sales spiked 90% compared to other foods as well. So really interesting there as well. Why has there been a big growth in veganism in the last 5 to 10 years? It started out initially, I think, a lot of research that was coming out, a lot of books being published, a lot of doctors, particularly in the States, being involved in spreading the word. I started out in California, 30 years ago nearly now, working with a doctor called Dr. Dean Ornish, and he was a pioneer in relation to developing a program that showed not only could you stop heart disease, but you could actually reverse it with plant-based diet, exercise, and meditation. And I suppose I was very fortunate. That was around the time I was transitioning to a vegan diet. So seeing firsthand, and as I said, he started it off and it's continued on. Lots of other doctors kind of following his footsteps and showing the power of diet when it comes to our health. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But I suppose in terms of what brought the greatest popularity, I think it was a lot of famous vegans. It created a lot of awareness, celebrities and so on. But the biggest thing I found has been the documentaries. I don't know if any of you've seen any of these, if you've any recommendations, pop them in the chat box. But things like What's the Health, Cowspiracy, Forks Over Knives is a really good one as well, a good one to start out with. Educated, Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, The Game Changers. So there's been loads of documentaries, and they're the ones I find get the conversation going the most, and get discussions on social media and so on, and really have helped create awareness around veganism. And it's not just worldwide, in Ireland as well. A lot of, the Claire Byrne shows had documentaries on veganism, Pat Kenny show, there's been all kinds of things, campaigns nationally going on and so on. So a lot happening at home too even in our own, headlines and so on, our own newspapers, a lot of publicity as well. So really, hopefully you can see from that it's not a fad, and it definitely is a trend that's on the increase and will continue to be. And I think, as I said earlier, particularly now that the awareness around the impacts a vegan diet can have on protecting our planet, is definitely going to even increase the growth. So are they healthy? It's really interesting. When I went vegan 24 years ago, there was only one vegan, there was no social media, and there was only one vegan on TV, and it was on he was on Coronation Street, which my mother and grandmother were big fans of. And probably most of you won't remember this, if you're probably not as old as me, but there was a character in there called Spider, and he was vegan, but he wasn't the best role model, let's say. He was didn't look the healthiest. He was always getting into trouble. So when I came home and said, hey, I'm going vegan, they weren't too impressed. But thankfully, since that time, again, as I said, there's been loads of the medical profession getting behind the benefits of a vegan diet for health and so on. So the perception has changed around it, but there still are some lingering concerns. So I just want to address those quite clearly for you today. So I suppose first off, all the dietetic associations around the world have advocated for vegan diets, and I suppose the proviso there that they're well planned, and that's the key part, and that's the part you want to make sure, and that's, I suppose, where I come in and help people, transition to a healthy vegan diet. And as I said, you could be vegan and on Coke and Oreos for the rest of your life. So it's really about having a well-planned vegan diet. And once it's well-planned, it's appropriate for all stages of the life cycle, including during pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence. And I was vegan I have 2 children, so vegan obviously through my pregnancies and through breastfeeding them, and they're both, vegan themselves from birth and thriving. My little boy's never been at the doctor, little girl rarely. Just in the early years, so complete, very healthy, very thriving kids. British Dietetic Association, closer to home, again, a well-planned vegan diet can support healthy living in people of all ages. There's even been position statements where they've talked about the benefits for athletes, how it's environmentally sustainable, and recognizing that vegans are reduced risk of certain health conditions, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, obesity, and so on. So well supported from the dietetic associations. And also, if you look at it from a population perspective, I don't know if any of you have heard of the Blue Zones, but really interesting study. And they looked at what are the cultures around the world that live the longest, and not just live the longest, but live the healthiest. And they come up with 9 commonalities from the communities that they looked at. They looked in depth at 5 different communities around the world, from Japan to California. And they found these commonalities here, which are really interesting. But 3 of them are related to nutrition. But one of them here is a plants land. And basically these communities ate a lot of beans, whole grains, and garden vegetables. So again, a plant-based diet. Interestingly, the other 2 you might enjoy. One is the 80% rule. They ate till they were 80% full, which is very good advice, and one I use with my clients, to kind of tune in and get used to intuitive eating, rather than counting calories or sins or whatever. And then the other one was wine at 5. So they enjoyed a glass of wine at 5. So you can go home tonight, put the legs up at the end of the day, and enjoy a glass of wine guilt-free if you want to live long and live healthy. So that's the Blue Zone study. So again, a plants land coming in here in terms of living long and living healthy. I mentioned this study earlier just in relation to the environment, and this was the Lancet study that was done. It was in January 2019. And what was really interesting about the study, and why I really liked it was I think it was 38 researchers from 17 different countries. It wasn't sponsored by the soy industry or the vegetable industry or the meat industry or anything. It was just pure research. What is the best diet for us, for our health, and for the planet? And what they summarize is a big, really interesting report, basically saying that global consumption of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes will have to double, and consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar will have to be reduced by more than 50%. Okay, so a strong message there, and really one, I suppose, that I'd be a big advocate of, and hopefully you will take on board as well. And eating like this, basically a diet rich in plant-based foods with fewer animal source foods, confers both improved health and environmental benefits. So I suppose from a few different angles you're seeing it there. Their plate that they recommend, this is a visual representation of what they've been advocating in the Lancet report, and you can see there that half the consumption over the course of the day should be fruits and vegetables. And then you have your other bits, your whole grains and so on, a lot of more plant-based protein than animal source protein. So this is their recommendation for our health and for our planet. So if you forget everything else from this talk today, the one thing I'd love you to remember is this green side over here is just if you increase your fruit and vegetable intake, you'll be doing tremendous efforts for your health. It really is one of the easiest things to start doing, and one of the things that's going to have the most impact on you. And it's amazing, if any of you want to hazard a guess or know what number of servings of fruit and veg is recommended to eat in Ireland. How many servings of fruit and veg is it recommended that we eat? You can pop it in the chat box. So as I'm saying, 5 a day, and they actually upped that a couple of years ago to 5 to 7, because really the research is indicating that we need at least 10 plus servings, but on average in Ireland we eat only 2.4. So telling the population to go 5 to 7 was already a big jump. But really, if we look at the research, it's saying 10 plus servings, and reports like this Lancet would concur with that, and so on. So really that would be my big take home for you. If you do nothing else, increase the amount of fruit and veg you're taking. And that helps then crowd out a lot of the other stuff we might not want to be eating as much of as well. So a big, you're spot on there, 10. It's 10 plus for, and some countries, we're quite low in Ireland. Some countries recommend 14, and some have even separate recommendations for fruit and vegetables. And I suppose just to throw in a little bit of added nutrition advice here, with your vegetables, your green leafy veg are by far the most nutritious. So I would always encourage some spinach or kale. I try to have them every day, pop them into smoothies or whatnot. So, and if any of you are interested in smoothies, actually on the homepage of my website, ailisbrosnan.com, you can sign up for free healthy green smoothie recipes. So if you want to get those, and they've got lots of spinach and kale and good stuff in them as well. So again, another way to increase the amount of fruit and veg in your diet, and also for that of your children. I find soups and smoothies are fantastic ways to get good nutrition into my kids, and they don't know half of the stuff I put in. It's a good way to add loads of good nutrition. Okay, so that's the Lancet report. Feel free to pop in any questions you have or any comments you have as we go through. I'm more than happy to kind of jump back and forth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about now from a health perspective, the relationship between plant-based diets and some of the leading causes of disease. Because really, we all need to be minding our health and taking care of our health, and particularly our immune system these days. So want to just share a few slides, not give you too heavy. I know it's lunchtime, and I don't want to kind of bombard you with stats, but just to, I suppose, it's really about raising awareness, and so you can make informed decisions then, once you know what the story is. So basically, this is a summary slide of various different research. So it's not one research study as such. But it's compiling the data in relation to deaths from heart disease and cancer, which are our top 2 killers in Ireland, with the amount of plant-based foods that are consumed in a diet by population, by country. So you can see here, the countries that have the lowest consumption of plant-based foods have the highest deaths from cancers and heart disease. And conversely then, the countries who have the highest plant-based intakes have the lowest rates of heart disease and cancer. So again, just on a global perspective, really showing quite clearly the impact that diet has on health. This one, I took this from Forks Over Knives movie because it really blew me away. As I said, I've been involved in health and fitness for 30 years, or a lot of work in health promotion. And what amazed me with this was there's no intervention I've ever come across in relation to heart disease that had this kind of impact, such an immediate impact. So this was tracking heart disease in Norway. So they were tracking from the 1920s, and you can see the heart disease rate suddenly dropped in 1940s, the early 1940s, and then went back up again. So a massive sudden drop in heart disease. And that coincided with the time that it was the World War, and Germans were coming into Norway. They were taking the livestock for their own armies. And so the Norwegians had to go back eating a more plant-based diet. So, and not be as dependent on meat. So the immediacy of this drop in heart disease was what amazed me, that it just, as soon as they made a change to their diet, the rates just dropped dramatically. So it was the rate at which they dropped and the immediacy at which they dropped was really interesting. So you'll see, I think it's Dr. Esselstein talk more about that in Forks Over Knives if you're interested. But again, really powerful visual for me as well. So as their heads, you get a quadruple bypass, tails, you eat your veggies. So they really, really are powerful. Again, with cancer, you may have heard of the China study, a big study done by Colin Campbell, who's a researcher in the States, and grew up on a dairy farm and so on, was very much involved in all that. And long story short, ended up going full circle back around to realizing the power of plant-based foods when it comes to cancer. And what they found, it was nearly like an on-off switch with cancer, with tumors. So again, these were based on animals, but when they fed them a high, 20% animal protein diet, the tumor would grow. When they reduce it down to 5%, it would go down. When they would increase it back up again, the tumor, because if you think about it, I suppose, particularly from dairy products, because cow's milk is meant to grow a baby calf into a cow in 6 months, and so it's full of growth hormones. It's meant to grow this little baby into a big cow in 6 months. So if there's a tumor there, it's going to encourage growth. So that's what they're finding is some of the big reasons behind this. So really interesting stuff with cancer. Again, summarized here in another way. These are the things down here that reduce your risk of cancers. These are the things that increase your risk of cancers. Same with obesity, on the same calorie diets, which is really interesting. People on the plant-based diet tend to lose a lot more weight. With diabetes, people, on a vegan diet reduce their medication more than those on the American Diabetic Association diet. So just, tons and tons and tons of research. Even recently just came across this one because I'm working on a program at the moment around staying healthy through the menopause, and those on a plant-based diet reduced their by 84% moderate to severe hot flashes. So again, for any of you in that stage of life, massive improvements can be seen when people shift to plant-based diets as well. So not only do you live healthier, but you tend to live longer, on average 6 to 10 years, depending on the research that you read. So that's a good thing. I suppose in Ireland, our life expectancy has increased, but what hasn't is our health expectancy. Men live with an average 13 years of chronic morbidity, and women with about 10 years. So we're living longer, but we're living 10 to 13 of those years with at least one or more illnesses. So that's again something to consider. So you'd wonder, well, why is this not out there? Why are our guidelines not telling us to do this more and more? Well, they are, but slowly. It takes a long time for research to get translated into guidance, and even in the revision of our own Irish food pyramid recently, about 2 years ago now probably, the fruit and veg were moved to the bottom of the pyramid now, and the number of servings increasing. So slowly it's starting to filter down. Canada is always very progressive, and their food plate looks very much like the Lancet report, or like very again high in plant-based foods. So again, some countries adopt the research quicker than others. So just before I move on to the protein section, just a question there: how do I replace milk, butter, cream, and eggs, which I like, and at what cost in the supermarket? So there are alternatives to all of those. For milk, you have soy milk, oat milk, hemp milk, rice milk, almond milk, all kinds of different milks. So you kind of find one that you like, or find a few and use them. I tend to use a lot of soy milk for cereals, rice milk for smoothies, or hemp milk for smoothies. So trying one that you like. Similarly with butter, oh my goodness, there's so many vegan alternatives now. I can't even keep up. Every time I go to the supermarket, there's new ones. There's a lovely one I tried just yesterday, actually, Naturally, Naturli is the brand. They claim it tastes like real butter. I haven't had butter in so long, I don't remember what real butter tastes like, but some really great alternatives to margarine and to butter. Cream, there's soy cream, and there's actually a whippy cream that my kids love now in their pancakes at the weekend. And you can get that like I'm in a small town in Kerry, and I can get it from my local super value. So the stuff is just so available now. And eggs, again, you know, I mean, I do tofu scramble, and we use egg, kind of a powdered egg replacer in baking, or bananas function as a binder in baking, or flax seeds, things like that, which again are adding more fiber and more health food to what you're eating as well. At what cost? Some of the items can be dear, getting less and less so though, because of the availability and the supply. But the way I see food, I suppose it's, you know, I don't spend, you know, money at the GP. I don't spend money on prescriptions. I don't spend money on, you know, having to take time off work because I'm sick. It's an investment in me and my health, and that's how I kind of see my food. But at the same time, then, you know, you've Aldi and Lidl now that are really cheap in terms of fruit and vegetables. And again, you know, even if you focus on that, but you can, you know, be vegan very cheaply as well. And there's loads of YouTube videos, you know, how to be vegan on, you know, $1 a day kind of thing. So there's loads of examples out there of being vegan on a budget as well. Okay, so any other questions, keep them coming in. So in terms of the protein question, it's funny, I put this up here because people aren't that generally interested in your nutrition until you go vegan, and then everybody's curious, you know, where do you get your protein from? And I suppose it's understandable, you know, when I grew up as well, I mean, if you say the word, you know, protein, what comes to mind? You know, meat would have been the first thing to come to mind because we were kind of indoctrinated with that. And yes, meat is a good source of protein, but we do have lots of alternative good sources or even better sources of protein too. So in terms of protein, really from a vegan or plant-based perspective, once you eat a variety of plant foods, you'll get sufficient protein. You really don't have to worry. You don't have to be gulping down protein powders and things like that. You don't need to combine proteins either. That was, again, kind of a myth that was dispelled. Really, what they found, you know, they thought you had to combine different proteins at each meal. But what the research is showing us now is once you have a variety of proteins over the course of the day, then, you know, you're going to get all your amino acids. Yeah, as I said there. So how much do we need? The World Health Organization reckon 10 to 15% of calories from protein. Most people in the Western world consume up to 35% of the calories from protein. So way over consume protein, leading to lots of problems with gout and heart disease and so on. So not as much as we think we need either. And again, from a plant-based perspective, you know, you get protein in all kinds of things. Again, you know, tofu is quite high, lentils, nuts, seeds, you can see a whole range there. And what often surprises people here is the vegetables. You know, you'd never think of, you know, well, I used to be honest, think of vegetables as a source of protein. Now it's small amounts of protein, but again, if you're eating, remember half your intake of fruit and veg over the course of the day, half your intake should be fruit and veg. If you're eating a wide variety of fruit and veg, all these little bits, all these little grams add up over the course of the day as well. So the big message is variety. And, you know, if you do want to go heavier, and your main source of protein from a vegan diet would be lentils, and it would be beans and nuts and seeds, and tofu as well as a great source, or quinoa, even some of the grains. Quinoa is a grain. So we love quinoa porridge here, or quinoa desserts, and things like that. So you can cook that up. You know, I mix it in with rice, 2/3 rice, 1/3 quinoa, and cook it up, and it's good to go. And you can sweeten it, you can have it savory. So lots of options for protein sources there as well. Hopefully you'll see. So any questions on that, just let me know. So I suppose what are the advantages of plant protein? As I said, meat is a good source of protein, absolutely not disputing that. But there are many advantages of choosing plant protein over meat protein. And they have fiber, which is we all need, particularly in Ireland. We have one of the lowest consumptions of fiber in our diet. Again, lots of digestive issues arising from that. So you're getting lots of fiber, tons of vitamins and minerals, loads of phytochemicals, antioxidants, and so on. So helping keep us young and keep our immune system strong. No cholesterol, no hormones, no antibiotics, and generally they tend to be low in fat, particularly saturated fat. So there's only one or two exceptions to that, but generally tend to be very, very low in fat. So there are many advantages to choosing plant-based protein. And then there's a lot of, you know, disadvantages to choosing animal protein. The World Health Organization back in 2015, brought out a position statement saying classifying processed meats as carcinogenic. So they're up there, you know, you're sorry now, but your Irish breakfast and your bacon, your sausages are up there with asbestos and smoking in terms of being carcinogenic, and they've definitively, you know, classified it as that. And that red meat it is class 2A, which means probably causes cancer, that all the research is indicating that it does, but it's not definitive enough yet. So again, but there are lots of, you know, if you love your bacon and sausages, again, there's so many vegan alternatives out there now. Even in Aldi and Lidl and anywhere you go, you'll get, you know, even Denny's sausages do vegan sausage now, vegan bacon and so on. So lots of options if you do want to cut back or replace the meat as well. And again, I could bombard you with research. I'm not going to do that, but just this is one that was done in the British Medical Journal a couple of years ago, and I suppose it's just because it looks at the bigger picture. It just basically mortality from all-cause mortality, and 9 specific causes of death were associated with both processed and unprocessed red meat. So again, big associations with red meat intake and you know, illness and disease. And if you're into sports and fitness, or you think, gosh, how could I get enough energy, you know, or protein from a plant-based diet? These are all plant-based athletes. And again, more and more of these, you'll find them on Instagram, you'll find them everywhere really, who just have tremendous gains and tremendous fitness on a plant-based diet. And you're finding an awful lot of athletes are turning plant-based diet from the performance benefits. Recovery from training is much better. There's much more inflammation. It helps, you know, reduce inflammation. So recovery is quicker and performance times generally increasing. There's whole basketball teams in the States going vegan. There's soccer teams, you know, it really is taking the athletics world by storm in a sense. And not just, you know, in all sports. I suppose that's the other thing, you know, across the board, all sports, from endurance to strength to power. And if any of you watch Game Changers, actually, you'll see some amazing athletes in that, if that area is of interest to you. So I talked fast, flying through that there. But I just want to kind of give you some take-home messages, really, and invite you for lots of questions as well. I really want you to kind of, you know, you joined on and give up your time here. And today, for reasons, I want to make sure that I address whatever questions or queries you might have. So just a reminder, I suppose, in some of the big take homes, the focus on nutrient density, you know, we're looking at fueling our bodies. So we're looking at not so much at calories, not at sins, not at points, kind of forget all that. You know, food is there to nourish us, to give us the energy we want to go out and live our lives as, you know, as best we can, as much as we want to have the energy to do that, whether it's to play with the kids or run a marathon, whatever it is, you know, that we have energy to get out and enjoy life. So start to focus on nutrient density. Look at what you're eating. Is that got lots of nutrients in there for me or not? And as I said, you know, if you can make whole food, plant food, based food, the foundation of your diet, you know, you don't have to be 100% vegan, you don't have to be 100% plant-based, but, you know, the more plant-based foods you can introduce into your diet, the healthier you're going to be, which hopefully you've seen that from this presentation this morning. And as I said, the research is recommending 10 servings of fruit and veg. So again, do nothing else for me today, but make sure you just increase the amount of fruit and veg you eat. And as I said, it'll do wonders for you. Start to introduce some nuts and seeds and lentils. And again, it can be just, you don't have to kind of change everything overnight. And that's, you know, what I try to encourage clients to realize that just look at some of the dishes you do already. If you do, I don't know, a stew or a casserole or a soup, you know, maybe put in half the meat and then add in a tin of chickpeas or something, or, you know, into the soup, add in, you know, 1 cup of red lentils, you know, while you're cooking it up. So you can gradually just, you know, use your own recipes, but just start to kind of gradually change them up. Nuts and seeds as well. I know they get a bit of a bad rap because they do tend to have a higher fat content than some other foods, but they also have essential fatty acids. They have lots of vitamins, trace minerals. They even have phytochemicals and antioxidants. We don't often think of nuts and seeds in terms of antioxidants, but they do. So good little snacks, particularly in the office, you know, mid-afternoon, mid-morning. You know, just manage the portion sizes. But, you know, for someone losing weight, I recommend 1 to 2 tablespoons. But once your weight's normalized, or that's not an issue, and chomp away. Choose whole grains, absolutely, you know, the brown rice over the white rice, the brown pasta over the white pasta, the brown bread over the white bread. you know, when something's refined, the fiber is taken away, a lot of the vitamins and minerals are taken away. So, you know, you're losing a lot of nutritional value if you're not eating whole grains. And again, don't forget the herbs and spices. There's lots of herbs and spices that not only have benefit for flavor, but also have a good therapeutic effect on us. You know, and if you think of, you know, making pasta with basil, or I even make pesto with parsley. I use lots of green leafy herbs because again, they add to your, you know, the green leafy to the element that you're trying to increase as well. So they're really good nutritionally as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. So again, if you're visual like me, I find, you know, a visual really helps. So this is what I would be recommending. So again, half the intake fruit and veg. And I like the fact that this image here, this is from Brenda Davis, a dietitian in Canada, and she has the green leafies in here. So your bok choy or your spinach or your kale, to be a part of that as well. And then your whole grains, you know, your nuts and seeds, and your plant-based sources of protein, and your beans, your peas, and your lentils. So that's really what you should be looking at. I do want to just mention B12. If you are 100% vegan, you do need to supplement with B12. B12 is the one thing you won't get. Well, you can get through your diet, but not on a consistent enough basis to rely on it. And because B12 deficiency, potentially, I've never come across someone who's had problems or complications, but it potentially can have, it's not worth messing with. So I would always advise B12. Saying that, anybody over the age of 50 in Ireland, it's also recommended that you take it as well, because our ability to produce B12 is diminished. So yeah, a multivitamin mineral is probably no harm anyway. And then obviously exercise. I could do a whole other one-day workshop on you know, making sure that you're keeping your body moving, keeping active every day. You know, your 30 minutes most or all days of the week. So making sure that you're including that in there. But from the nutrition perspective, that plate would be what I would be recommending. And it's, again, very consistent with the Lancet report and the other studies that I've mentioned earlier. And just a question there, would honey be vegan? It's not classified as vegan, no. But again, there are loads of alternatives. So, you know, we use maple syrup, we use agave syrup, we use, can use molasses for sweetening, even just dates, blend them up with a little bit of water. And so there's lots of kind of similar alternatives as well. So any other questions, keep them coming in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about giving you some tips to transition to a plant-based or vegan diet now, but do pop in any questions as we go through this, just to get a little drink of water there. So generally it's, you know, it's creating awareness, coming on, you know, listen to colleagues at work, maybe talk about, you know, how good they feel on a plant-based diet. It's, you know, coming into your consciousness. You might see a documentary, you go, you seek some information, you attend a webinar or something like this, you go experiment, try, like I said, maybe just add a tin of chickpeas into your stew and see what happens. Trying out different things, adjusting then, you know, your existing recipes, getting used to it, trying new recipes, and before you know it, you're out there inspiring others to do it too. So it is kind of a step-by-step, as I said, going through these stages to become fully plant-based. So I suppose some tips that I would have, I would say take your time. That isn't always the case. Generally, when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I do work with them over an 8-week period, but so by the end of the 8 weeks, they're fully fledged, healthy plant-based eater, and I have an online program to help support people with that. Other people that do choose to go cold turkey, and that generally tends to be because suddenly they've seen a documentary or they've come across some information that makes them think, oh gosh, I just can't stick my knife and fork into another animal again. That's it, I'm done. And they do kind of go cold turkey, for want of a better word, or cold tofu into it. So I guess it's what works and what feels right for you. I do find it's easier for people and it's more sustainable and successful, particularly if you're not the only one. If you have a family or partner or kids you're trying to bring on the journey with you, gradually doing it, I find, does work best. Get support and, you know, resources. There's loads of support out there, from, you know, tons of supportive Facebook groups. There's things like Veganuary. There's online programs like I have, you know, to support you. So do get support. You know, there's people who've been doing this. It's like anything, you know, if you needed support with IT, you go to the IT people, or, you know, so get support if you need it, if you're going to take the plunge, to make it easier for you. You know, we're all busy, you've enough probably on your plate, so do get support. Veganize your recipes, I think definitely is the easiest way to start. Look at the current meals that you do and how you can veganize them. And there's an alternative for absolutely everything now. There really is. From cheese, actually, just saw Eric added that in as well. That used to be the one that I used to struggle with. There wasn't really any nice cheeses really up till about 5 years ago. And now again, an explosion of them. BioLife is one I like particularly, but there's loads of them out there. Applewood is another nice one. There's loads of brands, and even Tesco and Dunnes do their own vegan, you know, their own branded ones now as well. So it is a little bit of trial and error, I suppose, initially, to find the ones you like. And it can be a little bit of overwhelm as well, because before it was such novelty, like, wow, there's new vegan sausages or something, and I'd have to try them. But now every time I go, there's another brand and another brand, and it can get overwhelming at times, to be honest. There's so much choice. So, you know, take your time, find the ones you like, you know, maybe experiment every now and again. But, you know, if you stick with the kind of regular ones you know you like, and then now and again go off that and try new things, rather than just getting overwhelmed and trying to try everything, because it's just blown up out there really in terms of availability of products. So you use transition products. So that's things like, you know, your vegan sausages, rashers, burgers, you know, so the kind of the processed stuff, I suppose. So I wouldn't be dependent on those all the time. You know, you don't want to be eating them 100% of the time, but, you know, 80% of the time, you know, do your lentils and beans and so on, and maybe 20% use your burgers and processed stuff. And I use them. My kids love some of the vegan nuggets and things like that. So I'm not saying don't use them, but I wouldn't be dependent on them as your source of protein all the time. Crowd it out, you know, eat more of the good stuff, and then you're less likely to, you know, eat the stuff you don't want. Read your labels. To be honest, that's not as important now as it used to be, because everything is, you know, you see a big V on things now, or they'll be promoting it as vegan because, you know, producers recognize there's a growing market in the vegan world, and so they're really putting it out there. There's vegan sections in shops and so on now. So it's before you'd really have to go through the fine print to see, is this really vegan or not? But most of them now are well labeled. But at the same time, it's no harm, get you know, into the habit of just having a quick look too. Supplement, I mentioned B12 earlier. While you're transitioning, I would recommend a multivit and mineral. And by taking that, you cover all bases, just in case you happen to be low on something as you're kind of going through the transition. And that would include your B12 anyway. And don't forget the minerals. A lot of people take multivits, I'm not sure why, and never take a multi-mineral. I don't know what that's about, but if you're going to take a tablet, you might as well take a multivit and mineral, you know, so everything's kind of covered. And there are vegan specific supplements. I just popped them in here if anybody's interested. Vegetology is one that's in the UK, and they do a product called Vit One, I think. No, Veg One, I think. I'm not certain. I think it's that. With vegetology, if you Google that, and then the Vegan Society in the UK do a supplement as well, a vegan specific supplement. So they're the two that I personally use. So practice your protein line. Bit of tongue in cheek there, but it is a question you're going to be asked a lot if you transition to plant-based diet. When do you get your protein? So, you know, use it as an opportunity to kind of to share your passion, or, you know, if that's what it is, or you know, to let people know what you can get protein in, you know, your beans, your lentils, your and so on. So just be prepared for that line. Inspire rather than incite. That's my approach anyway. You know, and everybody has their role and their place in their journey, but I'm not one to kind of go as much as I'm passionate about veganism for all reasons. I don't find that, you know, getting into people's faces about it is a right approach for me. It's just not the kind of person I am, and I don't know how effective it is, to be honest, either. I try to inspire people, and they see me out there running marathons and doing Ironman triathlons and, you know, doing all kinds of things and being fit and healthy and never sick and full of energy. And, you know, then that makes them think, gosh, you know, maybe this vegan thing, you know, is kind of good for you. Or so that's the approach that I would take and recommend. And remember, it's progress, not perfection. You know, we're all plodding our way through this life, and, you know, we've enough pressures on us pressures on us as it is. So, you know, if you're taking this on board, you know, I would say do it slowly, do it gradually, you know, and you know, if you're not 100% and you're 90%, look at the good that's doing to the climate, look at the good it's doing to the animals, look at the good it's doing to your health. So do you know what I mean? That would be my approach as well. So hopefully those tips will help. If you have any other questions, you're very shy, guys. More questions, please. I love questions. But hopefully those tips will help you. As I said, if there is anything specific you want to ask, feel free. I do want to mention just an 8-week program that I do have. You know, if any of you are wanting to transition to a healthy plant-based diet and want support doing it, I do offer an 8-week program. You could be eating healthy tofu turkey by Christmas if you embark on it now. And it's very much, as I said here, a step-by-step approach. It's, you know, week by week. So the first week, all you're doing is focusing on fruit and veg. You know, I give you all the videos, all the supports, all the recipes. Next week, we add in breakfast. Continue those two. Third week, we add in lunch and so on. So it just goes to very progressive, without pressure, very easy to do. There's lots of videos, there's lots of, even to the point of, this is what I use for my veggie stock, and this is what I use. This is various different videos there talking about, you know, protein alternatives and various different things. And then there's the dinner plan. So this is where it becomes really nice, because I even do up your shopping list for you for the week, and you just follow along to that. You know, I encourage you to keep a recipe folder, and the ones you really enjoy, you keep them together and gradually have a little portfolio of meals that you like. So that's it. Just to mention that, you know, it's €97 and it's for life. I'm always adding new recipes and new information. And just as a member of Iconic, I'm offering a discount to you. And today, just use the code ICONIC20 and you get a 20% discount. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask in the comments as well. And you can always contact me at another time as well. You can find information on the program as well. Just go to my website, ailisbrosnan.com, and there's a little tab up there called Plant Power, and you get information on that there. So that is that. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm just going to address some of the questions that have come in now. Eric is asking for the brand names for the golf in the shop. So, okay, so for cheese, BioLife is a very popular one that's in Super Value, in Dunn's, Tesco's, all the kind of main shops, and they do, I think, 15 different varieties of cheese. So they have cheddar and smoked and all kinds of things. There's another one which isn't as easy to find, Applewood, and they do a lovely smoked cheese. So in terms of milks, again, there's tons of brands. Alpro is probably the brand I like the most, but again, you know, you just got to try. Tesco do a nice soy milk. So in terms of milks, there's soya, there's hemp. Soya was the most popular, than rice milk. You have almond milk, and you have hemp milk, you have oat milk. So again, with Aldi and Lidl, they do oat milk, soy milk, and oat milk, soy milk, and almond milk in Aldi and Lidl. What else were you asking? Other products. The butter, I tried just the other day, there's loads. Naturally, was the butter one. That was not buttercream. Cream, gosh, the brand of the soy cream. I can't remember the brand of soy cream. It's a little small container, but there's a whippy one. It's a German brand, and Super Value stock it. Not being very helpful there, am I? The German brand, and it's definitely my local Super Value, so it's probably yours too. Actually, a friend of mine, Louise, she's a Instagram account and a little vegan, and she does consultancy work for Super Value and has really helped veganize their range. So Super Value have some great stuff that maybe some other supermarkets don't as well as a result. So hopefully that's helpful, Eric. Again, I have all the products in the videos in my program, so I actually do a video with this is this and this is what I use for that. Simone is saying, why many introducers still don't recommend a totally vegan or at least vegetarian lifestyle? It's just, I suppose, what I find is the ones who are trained more recently tend to be more supportive, and they're just not aware of the research. And I suppose the one thing, the years of study that I've had up to doctorate level, I'm always looking to the research still. I'm always reading the research, and when I suppose I'm so confident in my message because I know it's evidence-based, and I'm always keeping up to date with it. There is actually a new, well, it's not so new now, it's probably 3 or 4 years old, plant-based, what do we call it? It's basically the Plant-Based Association Ireland that has a listing of GPs and dietitians that are supportive of vegan lifestyle. And they pre-COVID were holding an annual conference, maybe it's Plant-Based Doctors Ireland. But anyway, so it's growing. So that's the good thing. And I think even with courses, I'm seeing now that they're starting to include modules on veganism. So it's really just awareness. It's people knowing. And, you know, as I said, even the dietetic associations, I shared some of those clips with you from their position statements. They're all supportive of a well-planned vegan diet. So you could bring any of those into your dietitian or your nutritionist, and they should see that. No problem. You have to go, guys. So if there aren't any other questions, and even if there are, actually keep popping them in the chat box, because I'm going to pass you back to Saoirse now, who's going to have a quick chat with you again. So while she's talking, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat box. Again, if you think of anything later, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this stuff. So, you know, drop me an email, even give me a call, and check my website out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. So if you go home and think about this and think of something else, you know, drop me, get in touch, and more than happy to support if I can.